So, Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna. And welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. So, today we'll be speaking from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29, Text 38. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Narayanam Namaskrityam Nara Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nasta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading from 3:29:38. Yo anta pravishya bhutani bhuterati akhil larashyaha sa Vishnu akhyo dhiyajnoso kalaha kalayatam prabhu. The word for word, yaha, he who, antaha, within, pravish, entering, bhutani, living entities, bhutahi, by living entities, ati, annihilates, akhila, of everyone, ashrayaha, the support, sa, he, Vishnu, akhya, named, adhiyagnaha, the enjoyer of all sacrifices, asau, that, kalaha, time factor, kalayatam, of all masters, prabhu, the master. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the enjoyer of all sacrifices, is the time factor and the master of all masters. He enters everyone's heart. He is the support of everyone. And he causes every being to be annihilated by another. Purport. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is clearly described in this passage. He is the supreme enjoyer, and all others are working as his servants. As stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Ekale Ishvara Krishna. The only Supreme Lord is Vishnu. Ara Saba Bhritya. All others are his servants. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other demigods are all servants. The same Vishnu enters everyone's heart as Paramatma, and he causes the annihilation of every being through another being. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we will be discussing some points from this translation and purport today, and it's really solid sort of verse and purport, because it is clearly describing the Supreme Personality of Godhead from different aspects. And the first point that is mentioned is that the first thing that is mentioned is Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, when we use the term Supreme Personality of Godhead, we usually refer to Krishna in his two-armed, two-legged form holding the flute, Shama Sundar Krishna. When we use the term Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu is used here and called the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is so that we can understand that Lord Vishnu and Lord Krishna are not actually different. Lord Vishnu is Krishna himself, but in his working clothes, or at the office, so to speak. And Krishna is the form of the Lord, who is the original form, who is at home, and who is not in his official duty role. So Krishna or Vishnu is being looked at from different angles, and the first point that is said in terms of descriptions is that he is the enjoyer of all sacrifices. So as the enjoyer of all sacrifices, we kind of know that that everything we do needs to be done for Krishna's pleasure. But then on the other side, if we look at it, we only know that to the extent that we are practicing it. So theoretical knowledge is good, but the application of this theoretical knowledge in direct practical spiritual life is what actually yields results of spiritual perfection. So spiritual practice and every action, every thought, word and action of ours, as well as using our time, our words, our intelligence, our assets in the service of the Lord, for his pleasure, not for our own personal agenda of trying to become famous or well liked, or whatever reason we might have, not for our own sense gratification, but for the pleasure and the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. If everything is done like this, then life becomes a whole life becomes devotional service. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 9, text 24, Krishna is saying that aham hi sarva yagna nam, aham hi sarva yagna nam, that all sacrifice is meant for satisfying him, and that by doing sacrifice for Krishna, not only do we automatically become happy and fulfilled, but the benefits of this sacrifice that we do for Krishna are permanent or eternal. So any benefit that we get from performing sacrifice for Krishna actually comes out as giving us eternal benefit. And in contrast, we have doing sacrifice to the demigods, and what is stated clearly in several places in the Bhagavad Gita as well as in the Bhagavatam, is that by whatever we do for the demigods, we get results, but these results are actually temporary and will finish when this body finishes. So that's a very big contrast, and a real fundamental point that many people don't actually understand, is that yes, I mean that they're not all equal, and Krishna is the master of all masters, as is another point in this purport, and that he is the supreme enjoyer, and that all the other demigods, including Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Lord Indra, that all of them are actually his servants and working to serve him, to run material nature, is a point that some people don't understand. And the other point here is that yes, doing anything for the demigods, as prayer, as austerity, as sacrifice, does give results, but these results are temporary and will finish when this body finishes. So we are all urged over and over to save the soul, because the body, we have many bodies, the soul passes through many bodies, but to actually get permanent results for the soul, there needs to be transcendental, loving, devotional service, and there needs to be service to Krishna himself. And the main service, as we know, the easiest thing in this Kali Yuga is to be chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra as our main service. So then, as you know, just going back into service, there are 9 different processes of devotional service, and it starts off with Shravanam, or hearing, and chanting. So hearing and chanting is the main service that sustains and nourishes all our spiritual lives, and needs to be done no matter what other of the 9 processes we are involved in doing for Krishna's pleasure. And then the point is that that everything that we do, we should have at the back of our heads or at the front of our heads, that why am I doing this? Is this actually pleasing to Krishna? And in a more closer and practical way, is this actually going to please my spiritual master? Is this going to be pleasing to Srila Prabhupada? And by answering these questions, we can refine our thoughts, words, and actions. And ultimately, it will be pleasing to Krishna and give us eternal benefit. So, that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and all others are working as his servants. And this is referring to all the demigods. Now, the other point, the second point in terms of description of Krishna is that he is the time factor. And this is also the subject matter of yesterday's class, text 37. So in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, text 32, Krishna is saying that time I am, destroyer of the worlds, and I have come to engage all people. So Krishna as time is actually quite interesting as a subject matter, because time actually does not exist in the spiritual plane, and it's described that time is conspicuous by its absence in the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, there is no past and there is no future. There's only the present. And by contrast, here in the material world, we have the past, the future, and a very fleeting present. So so and everything in this world is dependent on time, and we know that famous saying, time and tide waits for no man. So time is extremely powerful, and because Krishna is time himself, so, and he states this clearly, not just in one place but many places in the scriptures, that and this verse is very a sort of heavy, time I am, and very poetic at the same time. So 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 people who don't actually understand that Krishna is time actually are scared of time. They're scared of what time will bring and what will happen as they get older. Um, whereas people who have faith in Krishna, and also who are practitioners, they believe that it's all right, whatever happens as time goes by. The body might decline, but then what happens is body declines and also practical skills decline. But the most important things become clearer and clearer as one gets older, because time actually strips away the working senses. Time strips away bodily strength, and and for a spiritual practitioner, then what becomes very clear is what can I be doing now when I can't be doing all these other things. So that's when it becomes very clear that devotional service is all that we have as shelter, and is all that we can be actually doing. And not only should I be doing devotional service just to pass the time, but actually I need to be occupying my time doing this, because this is what is going to give me ultimate shelter, which is going back to Godhead, the spiritual world. So yes, it's interesting that anyone who doesn't know that time is the same Supreme Personality is afraid of the time factor. So a few other points about how Krishna is time, and is that there are 5 main subject matters in the Bhagavad Gita. There is Ishvara, Jiva, and Prakriti, and Kala. Kala, time, is one of them. Time is one of the 5 main subject matters of the Bhagavad Gita. And so it is a really important thing to understand. And the other point about how Krishna is time himself is that we know that Krishna's spiritual form, Vigraha, is made of Satchid Ananda, of eternity, bliss and knowledge. This is what Krishna's body is made of. And in particular, Krishna's body is in the existential potency, the Sandhini potency, which is not really time, but which is existential, which means it's here now. And this is the potency. And then this potency also, of course, then goes on to have the other two, the Samvit and the Ladini potencies. So Krishna's body is made of truth. It's eternal. It's made up of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. And in particular, the eternity factor, the Sandhini factor, is what he is in the Sandhini, or the existential potency mainly. So many of us would have had the experience sometimes of time going by really fast or time going by really slow. So when one is trying to do something for Krishna, and sometimes we wonder how are we going to fit it all in, there's really not going to be enough time. Sometimes we have the experience of time actually expanding itself and somehow being able to fit it all in. So this comes from Krishna being time, and Krishna actually expanding or shrinking time as he sees fit. And in all his doings like this, we need to understand that Krishna is our ever well-wisher. He is coming from a place that he is that we can repose all our faith and all our trust in him, and always be sure that he is acting for our best interest. And our best interest is actually not to be enjoying ourselves here temporarily, but to actually be building back towards our eternal home, going back to the spiritual world. So that is what Krishna tries to help us with at every moment. So then the other point made in the translation is that I'm the master of all masters, and this, I mean, in some circles is debated. Who is supreme? Is it Brahma? Is it Vishnu? Is it Shiva? Whereas irrevocably many times it is stated that it is Krishna indeed who is supreme, and how everything is working under his supreme direction. So not only okay, not only is Krishna the master of all masters, he is also known as the master of all the senses, and his name is Rishikesha. So Rishikesha means the master of all the senses. And the other point in this is that he enters everyone's heart. So so when creation actually occurs, there is, as we know, the three Vishnu expansions that come from Sankarshana, and out of the three Vishnu expansions, there is the Karanodakshay Vishnu, the Shirodakshay Vishnu, and the Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So it is actually the Shirodakshay Vishnu that enters into all the hearts of all the living entities as the Paramatma feature. So the Paramatma is Shirodakshay Vishnu, and he is present in the heart of every living entity, no matter how big or how small. And in this way, he is the support of everyone. So in the heart, there is both the soul and the super soul, the Atma and the Paramatma. And the Paramatma is the voice of reason, the voice of consciousness, and is the guiding sort of the guiding light in, or the spiritual sort of beacon that the voice of reason, like, if people are sort of trying to make sense of it from the other end, and oftentimes we tend to ignore this voice. But what the Paramatma is doing, that he's sitting in the heart and he's actually waiting for us to turn towards him and look towards him and start listening. So listening to our inner voice is listening to the Paramatma, and he's there guiding us and supporting us, and he's there both inside and outside, trying to guide us towards our eternal home. So there are many different angles from which Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu are being looked at in this text, and each of these points can be expanded and made into a whole class on their own. Um, I'll just I'll just go back a bit now that we've dissected this purport, and we'll talk about a few things generally. So this chapter 29 is titled The Explanation of Devotional Service. And this is, we are at the point where Lord Kapila Dev, he is talking to his mother Devahuti, and she has been asking him different questions. So the question that this verse is answering, that this chapter is answering, is that she has finally asked him that out of all the different philosophical schools, and we know that there are three main schools of philosophy. So out of all these different schools and out of all the different thoughts around, we know that the most important and the ultimate is actually transcendental, loving, devotional service. That devotional service is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. So please describe to me this devotional service, and also describe to me over and over birth and death, so that we all can become detached, and also describe eternal time. So this is what the content of this chapter is, that Lord Kapila Dev is explaining all these in answer to his mother's questions. He's explaining devotional service and time and the temporary nature of this human birth in this material world. And all of this is meant to be, this knowledge is meant to be creating detachment from this material world, knowing that it is all temporary. Doesn't mean that we treat it any less because it is temporary, but it does mean that we don't try to make it all in all over here, always understanding that we are here for a reason, and that reason is not to be wasting our time, but actually to be firstly respecting time as being Krishna himself, and therefore using this time in Krishna's service. And that is how we can achieve all success. So yeah. So okay, so there are many different angles, like we said before, and I won't go beyond the subject matter of today's verse, but I did want to just emphasize again that the main points mentioned before I wrap it up. The main points mentioned are that Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and he is Yagneshwar. He is the ultimate benefactor in all sacrifices, and if we do it in this mood without envy, then we actually achieve permanent happiness. And also that Lord Krishna is the time factor, and that he is the master of all masters. He is the supreme and is the master of all the demigods. He is present in everyone's heart as the Paramatma, and in this way he is the support of everyone. So when we try to understand this description in all these different ways, then we can understand Krishna a little bit, or at least attempt to understand. So by understanding Krishna, by understanding his activities, by understanding the nature of his appearance, and by understanding all these things, the nature of his appearance, his activities, and how he does all these different things, how he expands himself um, to get the whole spiritual and material creation happening. All of this is actually, all this knowledge is actually said that just knowing all of this, just even knowing all of this, frees one from the cycle of birth and death, and allows one to go back to the spiritual world, never to return again to this material world. So this knowledge is important, and we are meant to be using our time to cultivate this knowledge, because it is for our ultimate gain. And it gives a lot of solace also when things are going wrong, in times of distress. So it's not that it's only like prepare yourself for the future, but it also is here. Krishna is here in many different ways to help and support us while we go through with these material lives of ours. So I will stop here, and I haven't actually been able to log on to Facebook simultaneously, so I can't really see if there are any comments or even if anybody's watching. But I'm sure there's some people watching, and that others will watch later, hopefully. So thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful day. And in keeping with today's class, I hope we can all use our time productively in the service of the Lord for His satisfaction. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.